could not be part of church. So the actual running of the state was in fact separated. So it was not a complete theocracy. Theocracy being the joining of church and state. That would be very important too. And finally, the Protestant work ethic emerges out of Puritan New England. Well, how so? Think, I want to go to heaven. It's the most important thing in my life. I'm looking as a predestined Calvinist, as a Puritan, I'm looking for visible signs of salvation. What would be in Puritan New England in the 1630s and 40s and 50s and 60s, what would be the best visible sign that I'm good and going to heaven? Economic prosperity. My farm is prospering. I am doing well because I'm not sinning, I'm not messing around, I'm not doing bad things. I'm working hard. I'm prospering. And the co-joining at that point in time of economic prosperity and godliness starts in America. The formal term is the Protestant work ethic. You can apply it to European society at the time, but Protestants believe they will go to heaven because they will work hard in this world, proving to themselves with those visible signs of salvation that they are saintly and godlike and will in fact go to heaven. The farm of the person with the pigs dying and the crops not doing because of all the immoral activities, that person obviously is going to hell. Understand that concept too. The problem is that there were dissenters, and the people who didn't go along with the idea of a theocracy, essentially, running the state, was a problem in the 1630s and 40s. Foremost among them was Roger Williams. Roger Williams looked at the Congregational Church and said, "You're wrong and you're bad. Your treatment of Native Americans is wrong, and your religious intolerance is wrong." Ironically, the Puritans came over for religious freedom. Did they allow religious freedom in the Congregational Church and in the Massachusetts Bay Colony? No. Read the primary source documents assigned, and you'll see that Quakers and other non-believers were burned at the stake. You could not practice any other religion in Massachusetts Bay if you didn't practice Puritanism, predestined Calvinism. Roger Williams said, "Wrong, I'm leaving." And where did he go? He goes to Rhode Island and sets up a colony for religious freedom, sets up a colony where you could practice whatever religion you want to. In addition to that, there was a woman in 1638 within the Massachusetts Bay Colony, brilliant, phenomenal, and as a woman, challenging the power structure of the Puritan Church, saying, "I don't follow what they believe. I have a different way of looking at it." Antinomianism is a term you might want to understand. But as soon as she varied from what the church said to do, she was cast as an outsider, put on trial, brilliantly winning her trial, outsmarting the men trying to prosecute her for her heresy, until she admitted to the fact that when she talked to God on a nightly basis, he was telling her to follow this faith. On that basis, kicked out like Roger Williams was, and she traveled New York, Rhode Island, and other places, bringing religious freedom. The irony of the Puritans not following religious freedom after they sought it, and the irony of their intolerance creating religious freedom, is one of the things you need to understand as a historian of our nation. We create this religious freedom out of religious intolerance. There's one other place you need to know about in the 1600s where religious freedom was created. Obviously Rhode Island, obviously in other places, and that's Pennsylvania. Coming out of the religious wars in England was a young man named William Penn. The King of England, in order to reward William Penn, said, "You have a colony. You have to name it after yourself." And William Penn came over and settled Pennsylvania. What did he do with Pennsylvania? He made it a place of religious toleration, of religious freedom. Why? Because he was a Quaker. He believed in those tenets that we're all equal, that they will not do military service, and that they have a service that essentially allows the godliness within each of us to come forward and actually quake with the fervor of God that's within us. And those were seen at the time as something that could not be tolerated in a variety of places within the colonies in America. But he created in Pennsylvania a place where Native Americans were treated correctly, where you had religious freedom. So by the middle of the 1600s, what you had were places of religious freedom out of the intolerance of either England or of Puritan New England, where it was good and it was something different from everywhere else in the world. The final place was Maryland. And it in the 1630s was populated by Catholics. Remember, Protestants came over, Calvinist predestined people came over to Massachusetts. You had large settlements of very wealthy Catholics going to Chesapeake Bay, going to what was known as the Maryland colony. The Maryland colony was very prosperous. But again, as we know from our economic lesson, it's hard to make a living without a whole bunch of indentured servants. So as soon as the headright system brought people over to Maryland, those people came in and started working. The Catholics running the Maryland colony realized these guys were Protestants. They weren't Catholics. And they're outnumbering us. So in order to balance the scales, in order to make things work, guess what you got created in Maryland? The Act of Toleration. And the Act of Toleration said, you get to practice whatever religion you want to in Maryland, as long as it's Christian. Jews, you get killed. Atheists, you get killed. But you have a religious toleration going on because of the Act of Toleration in Maryland at that time. Were there any other factors that would allow for religious toleration? Yes, the Anglican Church itself. If you look at the other colonies, not New England, not Rhode Island, not Pennsylvania, not Maryland, Virginia and the Carolinas, you have people coming over who were basically Anglican. As we know, the Anglican Church is not really Catholic and it's not really Protestant. So it's that in-between that says, well, we're going to follow a religion, but we're not going to kill people about it. Despite the English Civil Wars going on over there, to change that church going one way or the other, you settle in America, what becomes your primary focus of your life? The primary focus of your life is making money, not demanding that other people follow your religion. And that leads us to the final bit of religious toleration, which is not the Carolinas, but the aspect of the other colonies such as New Jersey and New York, and even South Carolina to a certain extent, where you have this incredible cosmopolitan, heterogeneous population of people from all over the world, be it Danes in New Jersey, Dutch in New York, people from the Caribbean up in South Carolina. You have people of all different types and makes and beliefs coming together to form a colony. Is there one dominant religion? No, there's a heterogeneous mixture of religions, which by the very de facto nature of life means no one can say you have to believe this. Okay? So what you have by the end of the 17th century in America was religious freedom. And you have a good background now on how we got there, both tolerance and intolerance. And what you understand is that it's the very nature of us as Americans to recognize that within our civic sphere here, within our area of operating as Americans, I get to believe what I believe. And he gets to believe what he believes, and she does too. And we all get to practice that. Now, that got enshrined in our Constitution to say, no one religion gets to come in here. No one religion gets to come in and say, we dominate, we get to tell you what to believe. The state cannot establish religion, and the state cannot take me and stop me from practicing my religion. And we see that come forward from the genesis of it, come forward the settlements of the colonies in the 1600s. Thank you.